than villainous NPCs.
The secret we should never let the game masters know is that they don't need any rules.
We up in the war room, advance the brand, making more room. Understand, we'll get our demands, and before soon we'll be throwing hands. I'm in command of the grand expansion, harbingers of doom. We up in the war room, advance the brand, making more room. Understand, we'll get our demands, and before soon we'll be throwing hands. I'm in command of the grand expansion, harbingers of doom.
You wanna talk about doom? I know a thing or two about it. Got the big boom, nothing you can do about it. Bring a big staff energy, natural spell synergy. On the receiving end of unruly power, way of managing quest. Got me channeling the race banner. My aberrant mind sliver, I call it my head cannon. I do nothing but deliver the damage. So if we're playing in a brawl, I heed the call with a fireball and fireball.
I'm a barbarian with a hand axe in each hand. I'll storm the castle, and I don't mean 10 stacks of beach sand. Getting out of a hairy situation with a razor blade or bare knuckles stronger than Heracles in my state of rage. I'm a brutal big basher, towers full of powerful orcs become pork in my pig pasture. Drag dragons by the tail, they're whales, I'm the harp. When I slice and dice with stars, so goes
We up in the war room, advance the brand, making more room. Understand, we'll get our demands, and before soon we'll be throwing hands. I'm in command of the grand expansion, harbingers of doom. We up in the war room, advance the brand, making more room. Understand, we'll get our demands, and before soon we'll be throwing hands. I'm in command of the grand expansion, harbingers of doom.
Two blades on me, my neck so frosty.
Hey everyone, hopefully you can hear me, and I'm not, oh, it's the wrong thing's catching. Let's try this. That might work. Let's see. Test, test. Mic issues. Yeah, I had some mic issues. I gotta get like a new desk. It's wild out here. But yeah, I'm gonna do some world building. This is like the first time we were hanging out in Discord, and then now I was like, hey, I'm trying to like figure out because I'm working on making my own tabletop game, and I know that's like a silly, like a lot of people are like, why make a tabletop game? And I was like, well, I want to make it for myself, and if other people like it, they can play it, but it's just for me. Well, it's not for me, but it's like doing something for yourself, right? Like, why do people create art? It's an expression of themselves. So for me, I'm making a tabletop game, and I got like the universe and stuff down. Well, I don't have the universe. I have like the system down, right? Like, so I built the system. I'm actually building the system out. And I've decided that like I don't want to use, and I know this is going to be controversial, I don't want to use dice. I think there's other ways to play, and dice have become so, like, everyone uses dice, right? Like, and there's only so many kinds of ways you can create a system in your head with dice, right? So like you could do 3d6 or dice pools, or your standard d20s, you know. So I'm moving away from dice. I think dice are cool and I think they're beautiful, but I think there's other mediums out there that can kind of create interesting systems. And that's where I'm at right now. So I've created a system. Actually, I created this system like almost a year ago. Like when I had my first, so like a year ago, I had my little guy, and I was kind of home. So I created this system, and it was dice based, and I was like, cool. And I tested it a few times. I was like, meh, I don't really like this. And I played around. I tweaked a few things, and then I was playing. I was just out with a few of my friends, and then kind of struck me what I was really looking for. And of course you want to make it accessible, right? Dice are accessible. Original D&D was accessible for everyone because everyone could kind of get their hands on dice. So my system moved away from that, trying to keep in that vein of super accessibility. So my system uses cards, and I'll get into my system later. It's not really right now the conversation. I have some cool ideas with the system that I want to integrate. But so I'm using cards, and I know a lot of people are like, well, how are you going to use cards? And it's interesting. Instead of having dice, you kind of have like a hand, and then you play your hand as you play the game. And your hand obviously still needs to go through like beta tests and stuff like that, and alpha testing. So, you know, if you're in the Discord, you'll see a lot of those like, hey, come through, we're going to test it, like this aspect of the game and this aspect of the game. And, you know, we'll be testing all different portions of the game and how you know, whether you like them or you dislike them, right? And, yeah, so I'm moving to cards. Cards are interesting because I think they're accessible. You could always go to your local store. I know in New York, you could always go down to a local deli or bodega, and you could ask for a set of cards, and you'll always find standard 52 set cards. So that's my concept. Ooh. I'm declining the call. They should know that I'm doing something right now. And yeah, so they are aggressive with this. Hold on 1 second, everyone. Let me take this real quick. I'm gonna mute myself. Night night. Bye. It's my family.
What is all that stuff on me?
The spider and blood.
What kind of spider?
Family called. They were like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm streaming." They were like, "Oh, they should all be in bed," but they're up. Shame upon them. I blame Steve. Yeah. So, conceptually working with cards, right? The aspect of the game is card based. There are classes. The original system kind of didn't have classes, and I've looked into a bunch of classless concepts, right? Like using like other games, GURPS being kind of a big one, and looking into like doing classless systems, right? Like no more class. Oh. Hold on a second. Sorry, I'm super famous exactly at 9:21 at night. The time I needed to start, super famous. That is the moment in which I will be starting. So like I said, looking at classless stuff, didn't seem to work out properly in my head. I was like, how does this work? And then I got to play a few classless games, and I wasn't a fan of them. I do like the ability to build your character the way you want. Like a big one that like comes to mind, we just played actually was Crown and Skull, which by Runehammer, and it was awesome. But there was like having it be classless confuses a lot of people, and I know that's like a weird thing to say, but I think having the ability to have classes, you kind of get this ability to figure out where you want to take your character. Because everyone, it's kind of like going to the like all you can eat buffet. You like walk in and you see all this stuff, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna get French toast and chicken teriyaki and you know an omelet and some sushi, and then you like wolf it all down, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got a tummy ache. I shouldn't have did all that all at once. And I think that's the situation with a classless system is a lot of times people try to like wolf everything down, and they end up, the first kind of characters that they build are very like jack of all trades, master of none. I know that slogan is a longer slogan, but that's kind of what happens to a lot of people, and I could see that happening in a lot of different games, and I could see people kind of being like, oh man, like I wish I knew the system, or I gotta play it more. And it's classless, I think, is great for one shots, right? Because you can kind of like, oh, I want to make a wizard fighter kind of combination. Cool, that's great for this one shot. But like when you're doing a campaign, a long form campaign, a lot of times you can have that like, oh, I made a lot of mistakes with my character development early on. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, you could just build that into your character, and then like, oh, respec. But also I feel like, having a class gives people the ability to kind of like hone themselves in that fashion. So I kind of moved into I'm going to work with classes. One system I kind of really like is the Edge of the Empire, where you kind of have like skill trees. So I'm doing that. But again, I was kind of like invested and interested in how Elder Scrolls Online did their MMO. So you pick a class and you have like skills from the class, but you could do anything, right? Like, so we played that, and I played it with a bunch of my friends, and I played I was like the paladin class, and I was main tank, and I healed at the same time. So I was tanking and healing. And then there was someone who was playing the Nightblade, but they were running around with a two-handed weapon, and they were also like high DPS, but they weren't a rogue character. They were like doing other stuff. So that was interesting. and then the like tanky character was running around as a rogue. So it was kind of all over the place. And that's what I mean about like classless and like having different like having now that in my head that's kind of where I'm seeing classless is like kind of like in that fashion of you could do what kind of everything, but also the class gives you your starting for area. But I digress. So originally we talked about like, hey, where is this world? And I put up a poll in my Discord, and I said I kind of have the rules down, but I need to figure out like the world and kind of where the world is and what the world is. So I gave like a bunch of, I was like, do you want fantasy? Like, what would you be interested in? Like fantasy, sci-fi, future, cyberpunk, like where are we at? And we got dystopian cyberpunk, I believe was what we kind of landed on. Post-apocalyptic cyberpunk kind of combination there. Which I think is an interesting aspect of like what would this world look like? And in my head, this post-apocalyptic cyberpunk, and a lot of people are like, oh, cyberpunk, like cyberpunk, just came out, or Shadowrun, right? But I think a lot of us, and this was just me in my head, a lot like one of the games that kind of drew me in as a young Padawan, was Oddworld, and that's like dystopian cyberpunk. I would say Oddworld is like dystopian cyberpunk because you have like the world's being eaten by like the megacorps, right? Like late stage capitalism. And then you have these creatures that are fighting for their world. There's biotech happening because like there was like the odd creatures, the tall like bird-like creatures, but then you also had these like other creatures like the slave masters who had like attachments to them, and then the world outside was being used for its resources. So I said to myself, I said, well, that kind of matches what we kind of talked about, like kind of like a mix between like Mad Max and late like cyberpunk. And it was funny. I was just going through news articles, and I don't know if anyone out there knows this, but humans are like one step away from like really like eldritch horror, with what we're doing. Humans have created brain cells, and they also have eye stalks, and you can Google this, it's real. They were playing Doom, and now companies are working with them to kind of like integrate them into computer chips to give higher processing power for AI and for computers, because they are human brain cells. So I was like, yeah, we're like one full step away from like this like dystopian future where like our computers are living machines, which I think is cool. But Squigs. Squigs. Horizon Zero Dawn. Yeah, that's another good one. I'm moving this. Sorry. I have like things on my screen. Yeah, Horizon Zero Dawn. That's like dystopian cyberpunk, right? Like the world. So I think there's a lot of places, and I think when one speaks about dystopian future, right? Like this like cyberpunk and post-apocalyptic, we get this like very Mad Max picture. And I don't want to go down that route. I think Mad Max is beautiful and like conceptually really cool. I did see Furiosa. I thought it was cool. I know it didn't do well, but that's neither here nor there. I actually liked. I'm a little sad. I'll say this. I'm a little sad that the main villain in Furiosa, not to give anything away, but was very charismatic, and I liked that character. But I kind of want to move away from like, and also, I mean, like, here's another one that's like kind of the post-apocalyptic weird future Adventure Time with Finn and Jake, and that like they had the Mushroom War, and this is like the apocalypse. So my concept is like a post-apocalyptic cyberpunk world, and how do we get there? And I want to stay. I don't want to put like a time frame, but I think in the like in my head, and I'm an old man, right? So I'm about to date myself. But there was a TV show eons ago called Thunder the Barbarian, and they were like in the year 1996, and mind you, this came out in like 1970. So in my head, it'd be very similar. Like I don't want to put a time. Like I don't want to say it's 100 years. I don't want to say it's 200. I want to say it's in the future, and I want to keep it in the Earth realm. But I think you could play with a lot there. I think, like I said, even in our reality, we're creating biotech, right? So maybe there is biotech. Maybe there is Thundar. Yeah, Thundar is amazing. Something like that, where like I don't want to time frame it, but I think Thundar is kind of where I want to go with this, like kind of like Oddworld, Thundar, kind of like push it together, because there's a lot of stuff there, and I don't want to go, like I said, I think I'm repeating myself, but I feel like Mad Max is a little too gritty. Like there could be an aspect of the world there that is Mad Maxy, right? Like a giant vast desert, and you kind of have to like make your way through, you know. An excellent, if you're bored, I guess we're just kind of spitballing stuff here, but like if you're bored, and I didn't know this, a friend of mine put me onto this, Vampire Hunter D is post-apocalyptic cyberpunk. Like there are robots and cyborgs and mutant monsters. So something like that, where like it's future, but still very relatable, where it wouldn't be so outside the realm. Now I can tell you, you know, working in that realm, that's kind of where I want to go. And I haven't picked like a place to work on. I just kind of had this like putting down ideas and getting things moving forward, and then using. So I'm bad. I'm not an artist. I mean, technically anyone can be an artist. I can't draw, right? Like I don't have that talent. I think it skipped me altogether. Turns out my mother and father were both amazing artists. I got none of that. So yeah. So I'm going to bring up the Google Doc, which is behind my head. Let me see if I can move me. Whoop, and then I can move this. And maybe I'll shrink my giant head. Cool. I think that's better. So then, you know, first thing, so I'm using Google Docs. I think Google Docs is it's fine, I know. So the world is a cyberpunk. So then I could also put down here, so inspirations, Oddworld, which I wish they would like continue. It's so weird to see like video games kind of go into like the nothing, the void, when they were like they shaped so much of like gaming, like Oddworld and like Ratchet and Clank and what was that one? The Fox, Sly Cooper, and even like Psychonauts. Like those are great games, and they just kind of went into the ether. It's a shame. So Oddworld, Thundar, even Mad Max. Right, I think those are like solid. What was that? Horizon Zero Dawn. So those are great inspirations. And then no direct. I don't want to direct. You know, I don't want to like a super 2021. Which one was that one? $2021. That's crazy. Soulstorm. I have to look that up. I didn't play that. No direct date. So no, like, you know, taken from even like what was that? Mega Man X. It was always like in the year 20XX. I always like that. So like no direct date to allow players and game masters the freedom to, I guess, create in the world. Okay, so solid like start. So we have like, that's crazy. 20 Soulstorm. I gotta look that up. What was I doing? That's like, it's bothering me now because that was like during the pandemic and I could have played it, and it makes me sad that I did not. COVID, yeah. No, I was a huge Oddworld fan. Oh, that was another like computer game. Myst, that was like another big one I had like a giant like crush on. But it was like problem solving. Oh, and Alice. There was an Alice game where it was like real dark. It was like twisted, like dark Alice. That one was cool. I had a blast playing those when I was young. 2014 was new and tasty. American McGee's. Yeah, Alice. That was it. All right. Let me know if you could kind of see the screen or if I need to like zoom in. Because on my screen, I could kind of read it. You know what? We don't really need this. We just need like this. And like this. And then like that. And then like that. And Adventure Time. Putting Adventure Time there. Because I'll argue to death that Adventure Time is a post-apocalyptic cyberpunk hellscape. They have to fight a lich. So, conceptually, where should we start? I think we can kind of start giving the world a backstory, right? So we don't have to choose anywhere. I mean, like this could, you know, we could even talk like retro, saying like, oh, the world fell to you know, bits in the 80s. So the tech isn't super weird, but we could also make it super weird, right? And then I guess maybe there's like the phases. So we could say like, okay, in this world, what's here now? Like so much stuff should have changed. Is it Fallout or is it more like a fantasy? Personally, I think there's space for fantasy in the weird sense of like in 2011, yeah, I played both of those. They were pretty fun. They were pretty dope. I just remember them because I played them in, I think I was in high school when I played those, and they were pretty awesome. And then I must have played the last Oddworld, New and Tasty, and that was well. The last Oddworld I remember playing was 100% the cowboy one. That one I have like perfect memory playing. A Stranger's Tale. Yeah, that was the one I fully remember playing. That was the one, yeah. And then yeah, I remember seeing that. I remember playing that one. That one was actually really, really fun. Oh, wait, what is I so my basement got flooded and I have to like change up my basement. So I think to please Steve and the gods of the internet, I'm gonna run Ethernet cable from my internet into my room so I could hook it up when I'm not streaming via the Wi-Fi, because that's how I'm streaming right now. Because it is rough out there right now. I'm like looking, it's like, yeah, it's you're lower than the recommended bit rate. It's just yelling at me. But anyway, I don't care. Boo. Boo. Yeah, boo that. All right. So getting back to it, so let's see. Okay, so we have no direct date. So then we could say like, what are some key features of this world? I always thought so one, I always liked a kind of a world in which you lose resource scarcity. Okay, so what resource scarcity? Okay. We have a curse of undeath. I'm going to put a weird one in, and I know this is going to be super weird. And so also if you ever get a chance, there's a game called Numenera, and it's a very similar concept, but in Numenera it's like so far into the future, things look magical. That's the trade-off. But in Numenera, there's like random nanobots floating around, and that's how a lot of people use their powers. There's like these random nanobots floating around. I don't think I want that, but I do want so Curse of Undying, resource scarcity. We could also throw in obviously we have your warlords, right? And factions. That's a common thing. So slash city states, right? Something like that, right? Like you know, see, that's a very old school concept. I always wanted to put in a, like, there is AI and it's alive. It's its own thing. Like, that would be might makes right. Yeah. Is that, would you put that on the warlords or so? Oh, this was the other thing I wanted to do. Oh, sorry. Ironically, I'm going to put this up here. Destiny is a post-apocalyptic game. If you didn't know. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Might makes right. So, yeah. So we could tab that over. So I think some key features. I'm gonna also say storms. So what would you call that? Erratic weather patterns. I spelt erratic with the E. There you go. I think erratic. So all the benders go to that one city, and then they decide that they're gonna build their own New Jersey with blackjack and hookers. So we have like interesting concept here. Yeah. And then I think I'm going to say I'm going to say something and then I'll flesh it out. Magic. I'm going to put magic. So I could also say tech / latent mutations. Right? So conceptually there might be stuff that looks like magic. Not magic, but stuff that looks like magic. I thought the institution had no humans in it. That they were all synths. But that's just me. Or was that just Fallout 4? Alright, so resource scarcity, Curse of Undying, Warlord City State, Might Makes Right concepts, erratic weather patterns. Oh, got it. And magic, tech, latent mutation. Okay, and then erratic weather. And then obviously you're gonna have your large creatures, right? You're gonna have your creatures that are kind of like weird creatures. Maybe stuff that like we see before, or like even stuff that like one would argue could be fantastical but aren't fantastical because of just the way the world is, right? Like you might have a chimera kind of creature where it seems like it's magical, right? Like so you have like land whale sharks, yeah, stuff like that. Like I said, like a chimera where you would have like a tail of a scorpion and the body of a lion and the head of a goat. But in reality, it's just a hybridized creature due to maybe radiation or something like that. But they don't, remember, this is in the future where people have lost that connection. People have understanding of technology, right? Like we're not going to remove that, but it's more of a, I guess like kind of like in the Mad Max universe, right? Technology has been lost, but people still understand it. They're using cars, they're building engines, but they're not and then there are people, you know, in the earlier Thunderdome kind of concept, they have electricity because they're using methane from pigs. They're not drilling for it. They're using like methane. So I would say kind of like that level of tech where people have that understanding. Like, yeah, I understand tech, but it's limited. I know how technology kind of works. If they come to a computer, it's going to be very confusing. But if they come to, you know, like a handgun, they're like, okay, I understand this. Or an engine, they would understand. But computers are a little bit outside the realm of their full understanding. Maybe there are those who, like we've been talking about, like there's those who understand it, but you might or might not. Yeah, like purifying the urine in Waterworld, stuff like that. Like that makes sense. Like that level of technology where it's understood, but also it seems quote unquote magic, right? Like we talked about, like magic equals tech, latent mutations, stuff like that. And I think that is a aspect of the world that we're building here, where we could again move into like, oh, there are dragons. Yeah. Yeah, kind of like that. What was that movie? Idiocracy. Kind of like that. Because they were using tech. That was the funny thing. They had cars, and if you have a car, you have to keep it running. So that means someone understood something there. So I'm not against having people have that. But so key features, I like Curse of the Undying. I like that concept. I think we could expand that out. I have a thought about that. Resource scarcity, I think that's acceptable. The further out into the unknown, you would have stuff like that. Magic, tech, mutations, and erratic weather patterns. This one I kind of like. I'm stealing from Gears of War. I don't know if anyone ever played Gears of War, but there's a level in Gears of War where it's razor hail, and you're like, what's razor? And it's rough razor hail. So you could have stuff like that, razor hail, crashing satellites, something like that. So I guess now, looking at this in a grand scheme, do we want to talk about life? Right? We could talk about life, or do you want to expand on the features of the world? I think, yeah, we could expand on the features of the world. I guess now the question is, like, where do we want to go from here? Do we want to talk about, like, the life? Life finds a way, of course. We talked about how, like, this isn't going to be, like, a completely nuked world. This is a world that still has life and fauna and light and bugs and all that jazz. But it's now more akin to, like we talked about, Thunder, Oddworld, stuff like that. I think talking about what's funny is, Templar, you were bringing up the fact that, like, you could have these synths who don't want isolationists, but in my head, maybe the synths are using carbon life forms as labor, whether or not the carbon life forms want to be used as labor. Yeah, plants could have evolved better against deforestation. You probably would get a lot hardier plants, thicker plants, and even angrier plants, right? Like, super fast growing and durable. So you would have that, like, very thick wood, lots of vines, maybe spikes, cacti like. I could see that being very common. Poisonous, of course. That's very common. Yeah. Bamboo, I think personally what would be interesting is maybe a massive forest, or not forest, but like maybe people are like on one side you would have maybe a mountain range or something. Obviously we'll get into that when we start working with building up maps of like a local area, but like a bamboo desert, right? Bamboo grows super fast. So imagine bamboo stalks that are like super wide, 6-8 inches, you know, it'd be almost impossible to cut down. And bamboo does not stop growing. So I could see people fighting against that, or like the life fighting against that. And then you have to think about the creatures that would live in that. Maybe larger snakes. Yeah, that Brazilian wood. Steel like wood. Yeah, so maybe even weapons are more akin to using that, right? Because that's very common for higher life, right? They use what they can like find. So maybe that you would have like ironwood armor, and it's made from like that in that specific area. But I think we're kind of like just kind of shooting off into a distance here. So let's bring it back. So I think we could argue resource scarcity isn't the lack of resource, it's the danger of acquiring the resource. I think that's the interesting part of this. Kind of, instead of following the Dark Sun model, where you are on this planet of, yeah, for groundwater, exactly. It isn't the lack of the resource, it's the danger of acquiring the resource, or even maintaining the surrounding areas and the resources. I think that's a little bit more interesting. So it's even maintaining / or hard, what would we say? The difficulty maintaining usable resources. Like that. Like you now have this world, like you said, Templar, plants, super plants competing with humans for groundwater. And then even what, like we talked about, like, yeah, exactly. Dangerous to raise crops near town because you have these super plants that might come and steal all the groundwater. Or you would have your obviously Little Shop of Horror kind of plants that might show up. And now you're fighting kind of sentient plants. Though that's actually, you know, in our mythology. There are certain areas where you have to deal with sentient plants. I do want to point out, I want this world to have dinosaurs. I think dinosaurs are awesome. I feel like Jurassic Park will become a thing. I mean, we're like halfway there. We're talking about bringing back woolly mammoths. So, you know, my kids are going to grow up in the universe I can't fathom. Like, oh, woolly mammoths were extinct, Dad, when you were alive? I'm like, apparently not. Not anymore. Humans decided to bring them back. Yeah, so I think resource scarcity isn't so much resource scarcity and the lack of resources. It's the difficulty of maintaining usable resources, and acquiring resources could be dangerous, very dangerous. It's no longer, remember, humans have conquered the earth, right? For the most part, right? Like I say that and people are like, no, we can't terraform. And I'm like, no, you're right. Like we can't control the weather and stuff like that. 100%. But, you know, on the trajectory that humans are going, we will be able to do that in the future. And also, nothing on the planet kind of, in terms of predator prey, we kind of got it. Like, we beat everything else out. We take animals like apex predators and put them in zoos. And send our kids to wave at them and feed them. Bears, we feed them marshmallows and ice cream cones for amusement. Large carnivorous vulture bees. They make, I saw vulture bees, and the vulture wasp, and the fact that they make meat hives, and I was like, I was not cool with that, but I agree. Can strip a carcass to its skeleton in short order. They're stingless, but they bite. Yeah, then you could just make them ginormous, right? Like super ginormous, these vulture bees, or the vulture wasp, and they just You know, or think of it like this: carpenter bees eat, or carpenter wasp eat through wood. Could you imagine what kind of super bugs would eat these steel-like bamboo shoots? Shrieker size, yeah, more or less. You know, octopi that have kind of a semi-intelligent, where maybe they sit on the banks and they splash to attract children or younglings, and then the children and younglings get too close, and then boop, octopus. So megafauna and flora would be something you would see in this world. So key features: megafauna and let's put that in there. So we could say megafauna. I spelled that wrong, didn't I? Fauna. There you go. So that's another aspect of the world that we could work with. You know, and I don't think people would lose technology. I think it would just be a lack of understanding. I think that maybe that's down the road when we start to talk about like other creatures in the world, like kind of like a crow civilization, a Bronze Age civilization of crow and cephalopods. I don't know if cephalopods would get there. Also, you would have to think if like there was a kind of like nuclear war or some kind of war that devastated the planet and tossed everyone into the past. The oceans would eat a lot of that. So maybe you wouldn't get hyper intelligent cephalopods right away. And even the skies would be kind of rough. So maybe that's why crows don't go that far. Because I know what you're talking about exactly. They use tools currently. So it's not too far off for us to understand that they're going to reach that environment. Crotopus. I don't want to see. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna crow octopus anime creature. So I'm like I said, I can't really draw well. I know a lot of people who stream. They're these amazing artists, and they have such great talent to even just sketch stuff. I don't have that talent. I put all my stats in like talking, imagination, and storytelling. Sadly, I forgot to pick up stats in artistry. Yeah, I didn't stat myself that way. I don't even know what a crow octopus would look like. Like in my head. I'm trying to fathom it. I'm not against a crotopus. I am pro crotopus here. I think yeah. So let's put that down. So possible creatures, possible. So we could put like possible. So possible creatures. A crowopus, octocrow. I could see a mad scientist kind of working that out, like a crow octopus kind of hybrid. Oh, that's the other one. So we could say massive bees or massive insects to deal with the mega plants. That's it. That's another good one. New creature. Alright, okay. So difficulty maintaining usable. Okay, let's talk about the Curse of Undying. So 2 things on the Curse of Undying. Check my DMs. Where am I getting DM'd? I see you. That is amazing. Horror, but amazing. Let me see if I can bring this. Save image. I'm gonna save an image. I actually like this. JPEG. Yeah, I'll save it as JPEG. Now let's see, because I could probably insert it here. So, insert image. Open. Yep. Let's make it smaller. Oh, we did use Dream. I'm using Midjourney, and Midjourney is not doing it for me. A Crotopus. That is ginormous, but also really cool. I would shrink it down to make it like bird size. Right? And then like they would sit in trees and kind of drop down onto you. I could see that being a thing. But yeah, let's keep that. I appreciate that, please. I don't know what you typed to get that image, but that was pretty awesome. Oh, there was I saw the other. I didn't like full on. Let me see the other one. Oh yeah, like we are. Actually, ironically, that you bring that up. That one's cool because it has the crow head. I actually like that one because it has the crow head. I know other people can't see it. Has the crow head, but it also has like the octopus belly and crow wings. I think the second one you sent is more conjoined, but a little bit more Cthulhu. We'll see. Because I could probably... I'm going to steal this. Save this image. And then I'll put the other one in there too. But I don't know if anyone saw it, but they did just release a... apparently they're doing another... Venom movie, Last Dance or something, and I am on the fence about it. I will say that much. Yeah, see, I like the top half of that. If they didn't have like that secondary lower, but I mean, but that theoretically, argumentatively. Maybe that is a thing, right? Maybe the top half is a false head, right? We've seen creatures with that. Right? Maybe the top half is a false head, and the bottom half is the actual creature that we're talking about here, which has now become like this whole stream, right? Where that's the octopus creature. Yeah, I mean, I love Dungeon Meshi. Don't get me delicious in Dungeon. Don't get me wrong. If you also want to watch another good anime, I highly suggest it. Kaiju number 8 turned out to be really good. It's fun. Has that same kind of like fun energy to it. Delicious Dungeon, really cool. I like that too. I'm a huge fan of Delicious in Dungeon. I just caught up. So, massive fan. I think it's one of the best animes. I like it because it's just fun, right? There's nothing behind it. There's no extra, and they're not doing like 70 billion. Like, I tried to get into like Naruto and One Piece, and I know One Piece has been going on for ages, but like, I feel like Delicious in Dungeon is like a great slice of life that turned out to be better or like even crazier than what it really is. Okay, so let's talk about the Curse of the Undying, right? In my head, Zomborgs, zombie cyborgs, where there might be a kind of that was rough. I just saw that one where he fights the Griffin. Yeah, that was a rough one. That one hurt me, because Senshi was my boy. Like, I like Senshi. He had that dad energy, that daddy bear energy. Like, oh, someone doesn't feel good, I'm cooking for you. I'm gonna make you happy by eating, and that connected on like a very cultural, like deep level on mine, right? Because in my family, you're sad, you're having a hard time, we're gonna feed you, and that's kind of like the jam. We're gonna just get you food, and you're gonna be happy because you're gonna eat. Like whenever someone like has surgery or like a family member passed, we send like food. That's the one thing we do. We just send you so much food. And you're gonna be like, yo, you sent me too much food. And we're like, nah, not enough food. So he's got that dad vibe, and I'm like, yeah, I respect Senshi. And then they were like, here's his terrible backstory, heartbreaking. And I was like, oh, why you like this to me? So I liked it. But going back. Yeah, okay, yeah, so I agree. Like a Zomborg kind of concept where you have like a broken down robot being kept alive by a swarm of nanobots or corpse. In my head, maybe it's a techno-organic virus, steal that straight from X-Men. Not X-Men 97. I mean, they just caught up to it because of Cable, but something like that, where maybe right in the future, I remember when I was young, the big thing was nanobots were going to like resolve all of our problems. And I mean, there's a chance for that. But maybe there are just nanobots in the world that have broken, and whenever you get infected with them, they try to fix you. And then when you die, you're just this corpse that's moving, but are absorbing, like not so much eating, but absorbing other bits of, let's say, inorganic matter. So you can have, and then maybe that would give rise to, in this future, golems, right? You would have golems. And that's how you get the concept of the golem now, right? Like bringing in that fantasy, but how did we get to that fantasy? Exactly. You would eat what the bots need. So maybe that's the first like sign of this, or like organic, technological or techno-organic virus, or the Zomborg virus. Like the person just sits there and is like eating rust, or you're drinking copious amounts of like salt water because it needs so much more energy, like electrolytes. And find new hosts. Yeah, maybe that's why you don't get giant golems, where you like they get so big that they find new hosts. Yeah, maybe they get so big that they can't maintain the host, so they explode and spore like a fungus. They explode, spore like, and then that's how they get to their next victims, right? So also maybe they hibernate. Like if they don't see, or if they're in an area where there aren't any more life, they kind of just shut down to preserve themselves. So that's where you get the concept of like people rising from the dead. And people are like, yo, I saw him die. But in reality, the person just shut down because they didn't have anything to consume anymore. and then all of a sudden now the person's back and is trying to eat everything. So it's a very strange virus. So it's more of a zombie cyborg. Zombie robot. Zombie robot. Zombot. So it's a kind of like a nanoviruses. Yeah. That's also another possibility, right? Like there's a mother, maybe like still an active satellite that's busted floating around, and if you don't have signal, they just shut down. And then when they pick signal up, maybe 15 years, all of a sudden you get these things coming out of the ground, and you have this like Night of the Living Dead situation. Every now and then, yeah, they just fire up on their own. Maybe they get enough power or electricity in the air. Maybe during thunderstorms, right? Talking about that erratic weather pattern where like you would have these thunderstorms, and in big enough storms, maybe they activate again because there's enough electricity for them, ambient energy for them to kind of harness. And then they just kind of rise up, and that's where you have that curse of undying. And then you could also like introduce that into just ground troops and not enough command. Exactly. You would just have ground troops. And then you could also bring that into the concept of like other creatures having virus, like this virus, right? Like, you could have bears, wolves, whatever you want at that point could become infected. So where are we? Nanovirus. That is broken to broken originally meant to help fix people, fix organic life, went haywire. Did I spell that right? Nope. Haywire. Meant to fix it. Haywire. And now fixes to death. Yeah, I think that's what the Curse of Undying would look like in this world. Right? It's not zombies, right? Magic zombies. It's more technological zombies, where like these nanoviruses were originally meant to fix organic life, and now they fix you to death. And obviously we could expand on that. How do you stop these things? Fire, right? Maybe fire, maybe electricity. You right? Like overfeed them. Throw so much matter at them that they can't. Yeah, that's terrible, right? Like you live in this like constant state of limbo. Yeah, where you're just being shocked. You're being kept alive in like this terrible hellscape. And I think that would be an interesting kind of like entity or aspect of this world, is something you have to watch out. You have this virus or this nanovirus that can infect you like a spore. I would say, obviously in the player aspect, on the player side, being infected, it would be a time period. Obviously you want to give players the ability to not just like die. So, you would, as I would build this out, there's going to be multiple aspects, but that is the Curse of the Undying in this world. Key features of the world. That is a key feature. I like that. I think that's an interesting thing. You know, we have the megafauna and flora. That's an interesting thing. You know, erratic weather patterns. That makes logical sense. I don't know what like I don't want to put too much into the warlord city state. Might makes right. I think we kind of understand, but if I build too much here, will remove the freedoms of the GM in that world, and the ability for them to kind of like play and create this world. Obviously, if I'm doing this specifically for my game, yeah, sure, like we'll work on that. But I don't want to dive like whole hog into that, because I want to allow people the chance to kind of like figure out their world. Maybe they don't want that in their world. So I think, yeah, we could give recommendations on like things you might see in this, in if you were using this. You know, you would have isolationist AIs. You would have well, I mean, maybe we'll, you know what? I'm gonna have to say maybe we're gonna cut this. I'm gonna put that here. And you're gonna be like, well, why are you doing that? And I'm gonna be like, it makes sense there because it's the life in the world. So this is key features of this world. What was aspects? You know, like land feature. I think features in the broad sense, and then life. We could talk about that, because also, I mean, we haven't gotten into what or what in terms of, right, building this out and building this game out. What races do we have, or species, or entities, right? What do they look like, or where are we playing them? What are we using? Right. Obviously I'm going to use human, but what else is there? And if I'm building this on an Earth analog, you could argue, I think what would be fun, some kind of robot, right? Like you would have a robot species, because we keep bringing up that isolationist AI. So would be android or robot? Like what? I always get confused. What is the difference between android and robot? I know cyborg it's part of living matter, right? That's the caveat. That's where I'm get confused. Is like, you know, like are is it right? Like, so is it android? So wait, what is the difference? That's what I'm trying to figure out here. I always get confused. Is it cyborg? I know cyborg, but what's the difference between android and robot? Are they the same thing? I'm just gonna use robot because that makes the most sense, right? I'm just gonna use robot. I feel like robot makes the most sense, because everything else, like I'm not sure what the difference is, and I don't want to get hung up on like, oh, what's the difference between like robot and human and an android and cyborg. I'm just gonna use robot. And then so mutant, not X-Men. Mutant in the sense of like think like what was that movie? Not Back to the Future. Total Recall. Like you had the people who were mutating because of the planet they lived on. Yeah, like you could have a Roomba robot. Androids are usually somewhat anthropomorphic, right? But the robots are like humanoid. That's in my head. That's what it is. But I'm going with mutant in the sense of like not X-Men. Like you might have like thicker skin or the ability to see in the dark and stuff like that. Like mutations like that, but you're not technically just human. Like a Chernobyl mutation. So these are the player species. So you have human, robot, and mutant. Not Crotopus or the Octo Crow. Read trans metropolitan. No, I did not. I'm gonna Google that now. Let me see what that is. Trans metropolitan. Cyberpunk transhumanist comic book series written by okay, so it's Cyberpunk. Cool. In the future, never specified, 23rd, Spider Jerusalem, retired. That's the person's name? That's a crazy name. Retired writer, journalist, and bearded hermit lives within an isolated, fortified mountain hideaway. Following a call from his irate publisher demanding the last 2 books for his dear, Jerusalem is forced to descend into the city. The World, the city's largest newspaper, his first story is about an attempted secession by the transient movement people who use genetic modification on alien DNA to be completely different species and are forced to live in Angel's 8 slums district. The leader of the movement, Fred Christ, is paid to incite riot and provoke the police who use it as an excuse to clear out Angel's 8. However, Jerusalem wow, this story is crazy. Oh, they used alien. I see what you're saying. They would use alien DNA. They should turn this into like an Amazon show. That's all I know, because this is wild. I could see this being an actually good show. So mutant. So what would we say? Like people who use splicing. CRISPR, right? CRISPR. That's I think I'm spelling that wrong, but those are the people who like genetically modify themselves in the real world, which is wild. Yeah, I'm definitely going to read it, or hear me out. I'm going to 100% listen to a YouTuber or one of those like not reviewers, but like the YouTubers who do like all the comics explained. Definitely gonna listen to like something like that with them. And then I think I want to... He's got a 2-headed cat that smokes Russian cigarettes. Stop it. That's a wild world. Mutant. And then let's do 4, right? So we have human, robot, mutant, and then what would be like a good last one? So because I feel like you know, you're gonna have to sit here kind of like figure out, you know, what each species kind of gets that makes it different from each other. Mutant's easy, right? Like, or hold on, cut mutant. There you go. So you could have a human, and then humans who augment themselves are mutants. And they're not their own thing. They're kind of like, you know, like a subcategory of human. Where, like, as you play the game, you might augment yourself, and then all of a sudden now you're like no longer human, you're mutant. I could see that being something. Or maybe it's still human, and that's just an aspect of humanity. Right? Because that guy is technically a human, but the other humans are crazier. Like that, like Wiz line, right? I'm gonna put something here. And I don't know if people are gonna accept it, but I'm going to say, I'm gonna say this. And I know people are going to be like, wait, what? I'm going to be like, yeah. Now, bear with me, right? I'll make it make sense. Sasquatch. Now, bear with me. We have, in our world, Transmet also has people who took on cybernetic augmentation. Some even upgraded themselves into swarms of nanobots. Damn, that's crazy. That's crazy. That's an extreme. That's an extreme. Yeah, but I'm gonna say Sasquatch, and the reason why I'm saying Sasquatch, right? In our world, and again, I'm kind of trying to build this as like our world, like a world that's similar to Earth, or an Earth kind of like world. We have these legends of this hairy creature, right? And these myths. But what if they weren't a myth? Maybe they were real. And you then had this apocalypse, and it gave them the opportunity to kind of come out into the world and take on a new role as more of a natural guardian, a guardian of the natural world, or something like that. And then they themselves are affected by the world around them, but they can't do that mutation crossover, right? They can't augment themselves with stuff because maybe their bodies don't allow it, or even the tech that we have, because it was based on human, it just doesn't work too well for them. That's my thought on a possible player species. You have a human, and then your hybrid human, right? You have a robot. I think that's a cool one, right? Everyone can kind of get behind that. And then you have your Sasquatch. And then obviously things can be added, right? And we can expand this out as we go and talk about the world. Maybe we find something else that becomes interesting. You know, I do want to kind of stand away from, well, you know, and also, I mean, like, think of it like this: Planet of the Apes, right? What's the difference between the Planet of the Ape and the Sasquatch? They're both talking ape people. So it kind of fits here, right? We're just using Sasquatch, a non-copyrighted creature. So that kind of tracks. And what would be, so we have a lot of land-based entities. Would there be an aquatic-based entity? Or maybe a smaller creature? What are we thinking? Do we have any concepts on that? Because in my head, I think that touches on a lot of like solid things, right? Yeah, because also this gives me an idea of like how to like expand it out. Cuttlefish. Cuttlefish. It's always the octopus. Or the cuttlefish. I mean, crab people, right? But South Park did that. Axolotl, and maybe a lizard folk. That'd be cool. That'd be cool. An axolotl, lizard folk kind of creature. Are they cool enough to be a player species? That's the question. This is the big question. Would they be a player species? What other oh, you know what? Thinking of axolotl, like aquatic. She couldn't play one, Tina. Do it for Tina. So I could see that. See her being a little upset. So I was just thinking, I was like, what interesting. Or Zach. Yeah, Zach would love to play an axolotl. You know what's kind of funny? Like, if I was to say, like, how would you make fantasy races in this world, right? So we have your human, which is your standard, and mutant is just like alternate human, right? In like D&D. And then you would have your robot, which for me would be like an elf, right? Your Sasquatch, which would be more for me, reminds me of a dwarf, right? Like kind of like stoic, hardy, kind of something like that. So what's the last thing left? And that is the halfling or the gnome. And maybe that is the aquatic based creature. And what creatures in the ocean kind of have that kind of concept besides your typical like squid, right? Squids are and I don't know a lot of ocean creatures, right? So I mean, you have dolphins and that's right? Like that's obvious. Turtles, right? But then you got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Axolotl, that's adorable. The Dumbo octopus, pufferfish. So what creature could kind of be both? Right? Because I feel like if mantis shrimp, that's a weird one. Like I give it to you. But like what kind of creature could be both? Like aquatic and land, right? Because you have to play it where the player will make sense to allow the player to use this. They at least got they do have legs. Starfish also have legs. I mean, you could also use so like I don't want players to be stuck in a scenario where they can't, like, they always have to be near water. Right? Because that's what you get when you're like, yeah, Frog or Toad is another one where that's like a lot. I could see people just being like, oh, this is, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, kind of makes sense like that. Because my concern is, and obviously you could do whatever you want. You could be like, oh, well, as the creator of this world, I could easily just kind of turn around and be like, well, it doesn't matter. They get to be land-based now. So fight me on that. And also be aquatic at the same time. Because a lot of people, I know, like, when I'm working on a campaign, you get people who are like, oh, is it an aquatic campaign? And then I'm like, yes. And then they're like, okay, I'm going to take this species, this, and this, because I can then use the water to my advantage. But if you're playing a regular campaign, you know, I've never had someone be like, I want to play a mermaid, because how would that work, right? A Crawlopus. It always comes back to the Crawlopus. Like, how does the mermaid work in the land-based campaign without the person, without, you know, the hand waving of, oh, you get legs while on land, and then if you go in water, you get the fish leg, the fish half. So I you know what I mean with that? Like, you have that argument of like, how can I make this make sense? And I think that's where I'm getting stuck at. What about snail? I think snails are cool. Because you could give them, like, their head would be their shell. Or, like, their leftover shell. And they don't have bones, but they don't grow huge, right? Not super big. And then you could kind of have, like, different snails, right? Because you could have the ones that with, like, the long, like, snail shell. And I could see snails being like an interesting, and then you could have sea snails. And I know both don't work, but like you could argue that like the snail could be both. Or like maybe you kind of just put it in. So I'm gonna put snail. Snail. Oh, like they that's like something part of them, like they need to find like shells or a hermit crab, and they need to find like a shell or I want to see if I can make an AI image of a snail person. Snail humanoid fantasy D and D. Let's see if I could get a cool one. Right? Because I think that would be cute. You would have like a snail person. And I don't think anyone would ever be mad at snail person. Especially if they don't run fast. I would have to just learn more about snails. I don't know much about snails. I mean, I can make things up, right? You can't stop me. It's the future. Oh my god. Oh my god. They're adorable. They're so freaking adorable. Hold on. I'm gonna see if I can get a good one. But currently, yes, snail was the right choice. Snail was always the right choice. I could see people like playing it out. It's no tiefling. I don't think people are gonna take to it and be like, "Oh man," like everyone took to tiefling. Tiefling became like blew all the other races out the water. Okay, so you know. I think snail was the right way to go. I'm trying to get like, obviously, like I said, I'm not very good with drawing, so art isn't my forte. So, you know, I know a lot of people. True, deep water snails. I don't want people to get like mad if I show AI art. I just think like it's a tool that I have to use. Oh, hold on. They can live off the bamboo. That's true. Use was used. Rerun very region. I made a mistake. I clicked buttons and the buttons were mistakes. But here, let me show everyone. Yeah, I know like people, the war with AI is currently happening. And I'm just like, I'm using it as a tool. I'm not saying it's, you know? All right. Let me throw in my snail character for people to see, because I think snail was the right way. Let me enter image. Bong. Look at this little dude. This is an adorable little man. For snail. But I can see people like getting on board with something like this. You know? You could do like a whole kind of concept here. I think it's too big. I blame the Crotopus. Oh, wait. Oh, I brought it inside of the word. I don't know how I did that. Right? And that's just Crotopus. Fear it. Yeah, Snail looks adorable. I think Snail was the right way to go. Oh, Tussie. Stop it, please. You silly. But yeah, I think Snail is cool. You could do a lot. I mean, like, obviously the AI gave it 2 eyes and the stalks. So I guess, you know, moving forward, I would have to work on that to say, like, do they have eyes, you know, or do they have stalk eyes? You know, what is it? Did they, you know, did they evolve to get rid of those those, you know, instead of having eye stalks, maybe they're just feelers now that they could like kind of sense out. I don't know. This snail creature is kind of giving me like Jim Henson Muppet vibe. That's kind of where I'm at with him right now. Wonder, see if I could copy this. Copy. I'm trying something. I want to see if, like, obviously snails, you kind of, they're androgynous looking, right? Like, you wouldn't be able to tell a female from a male unless, like, I guess you were very forward with your conversation. Yeah, I could see them becoming like they moved their eyes, like their eyes became, you know, when they became more of a like an upright creature. The eyes became like on the side of their head, and they kept their antennae or their feelers, right? We could say feelers. That would make the most sense. They got like another cute guy. Oh, this one's adorable. Very Jim Henson-y. That's what I'm getting from like these images. You know what I think is amusing is like I typed friendly snail humanoid fantasy, and that's what it gave me. And then I tried friendly snail humanoid fantasy. And then I went with gender male and female, and they just went so off the wall. I mean, one of them is kind of dope. One of them looks really cool. I don't even know how to handle it. But they went like in a whole different direction than I was like. Giving them a gender for the AI suddenly created this whole new realm of like what they would look like. And now I'm like, oh man, do I want them to look human, or should they maintain this weird like adorableness? Snail 30, no. You know, like do they maintain this human concept, or do we? Yeah, I'll bring up the image. I'll save it, and then I'll attach it under this guy here. So I'll insert it, image. You know, which do we want? You know, and that's I think is a solid question. Is do we want this more not traditional, kind of Jim Henson-y, Muppety snail creature, or would people rather a more standard human snail creature? You know, this is very human when you're looking at it. You see the nose, you see the eyes, you have ears. They just have a shell. So that's the question. Where's the line here? I'm more of a fan of the Jim Henson concept, because I think having two eyes, you would have it's too human, right? Like if a snail wouldn't get that close to human, but would that drive people away from playing that because they want to feel or seem human? And I guess that's the question here. But I think that's a question for another day. I want to kind of move away from like this. I think we have 4 interesting species in this fantasy universe that we're working on here. So, you know, what key features? We have erratic weather patterns, and I'm going to put in, so falling satellites, magnetic storms, what are the weird ones? Magnetic storms, sandstorms, right? Sandstorms, I guess, would be a good one. So magnetic storms would be like aurora borealis, but on like amped up, right? And it would cause like things to just go haywire, or possibly even turn on. Ancient machines could theoretically turn on because of these magnetic storms. Sandstorms, what other? Acid rain. That was a fun one from when I was a kid. Everything was acid rain. And what other ones can we get to? I think those are your typical kind of like storms. Sorry, I was doing the whole new thing. Oh, sync. Oh, cave-ins, constant cave-ins. That makes sense. So cave-ins or sink. I think sinkholes. Sinkholes make the most sense because even then you could have like situations where like people are walking near these what would you call them? The you shoot rockets out of the missile silos. Then people won't know what they are, and they think they're like just fell into a well or something crazy. I could see that being something like they just fall into this missile silo, and you're like, oh shit! Like, well, that was it for them. Yeah, unregulated mining. I can see that. Yeah, so I think right now we have like a solid base on like what key features and possible life in this world. And I think from here, the next time we get together, you know, we'll start to expand on working in the actual world. Maybe we'll start to build on a map. I'll go to Incarnate, I think is a solid one. And then we could work on a map and then maybe start to zoom in on specific locations, or even maybe next time I'll go into details on the game, the actual game, and kind of expand out on what the game is. And then we can work on you know, maybe talking about the game a little bit in the beginning, and then working in this world and how maybe we could talk about, I mean, we kind of went all over this already, but like the tech and the latent mutations, the mega fauna and flora, stuff like that. Maybe then we could start to go into the lore, the deeper lore of like the warlords and the city states. I think that would be an awesome topic to kind of like talk about. But like I said, check out our Discord. The events go on Discord whenever we're gonna run these world buildings. I'm gonna try and make these at least a weekly conversation for all of us to have kind of fun and to like build this interesting universe, see what's going on here. And check us out. Next Wednesday we'll be playing Pathfinder 2nd edition and continuing our ongoing story. If you're into kind of you know, tabletop role-playing games, we're live on, and we play Wednesday at 8 p.m. And then, like I said, maybe Mondays or Tuesdays will be our go days when we talk about this dystopian apocalypse cyberpunk world. I don't know why I wrote world. And I'll sit down and look at like Oddworld and maybe steal stuff from there. I think Oddworld had a lot of interesting stuff. You know, I'll go into looking into a little bit Horizon Zero Dawn, and yeah, let me know what you guys think. And yeah, if you have any thoughts, if you're watching this later and you're like, oh, this would be a cool concept, throw them up into the comments, and I think we'll have fun kind of building this world out and seeing it grow and taking it into an interesting. Because theoretically we could even like divide the world, this like future Earth, you know, into like, okay, or maybe all of like Northern Europe is just a massive ice area, or maybe technology people kind of, because it's so far north in Canada, maybe there were in the future, right, people created kind of like weather machines, and now there are just these domes of in like Canada, it's like frozen like tundra, and then there are these massive domes maybe miles across where it's just these islands of just massive forest or like almost rainforest, and I think that would be like an interesting concept where like because of these, that's where people were at one point, but they, whatever happened, and then when you have those magnetic storms, it turns off or heightens them, so then they get bigger. Maybe that's a problem. They're just constantly growing because of magnetic storms. So we'll look into that. I think that's something there. And then maybe we'll start building towns and talking about towns and different worlds and jumping all, we could go all over. So I hope everyone had fun. I had a blast. Thank you for hanging out with me. And yeah, check out our other stuff. And like I said, it was awesome, and I appreciate everyone being here. So wanted to say have a good evening, and yeah, talk to everyone later. Bye.